All right, let me see if it fixes itself over here. On Instagram, we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. Not yet Instagram. Let's see if we can get this working here. I think we're almost there. Update the channel and provide a new stream key. I did that. All right, let's see if it pops up over here on Instagram or if I broke something. I think it worked. I think it just might work. All right, there we are. Cool. And now we're live on Instagram. We're here. Hi, team. How are we doing today? It's really snuck up on me. Office hours today.
It's been a long week.
It has. Rachel, we haven't connected at all this week. How is claim support going? How are people's claims? Are people more encouraged or discouraged? What's the general sentiment?
People are encouraged by us, but not by their insurance company at all. Kind of in the same spot. We're getting a lot of people right now that have they've paid for testing for themselves out of their own pockets, and now the insurers are miraculously finding a way to also pay for hygienist testing of their own. It's a miracle how all of a sudden there's coverage when, you know, when they decide it's warranted.
I know that I'm fine naming your insurance companies. I know I've seen American Family do that. Are there other carriers that are doing that?
Yes. Farmers, Mercury, State Farm, everybody's doing it. USAA, like everybody.
Where they're just, you said they were denying, and then out of nowhere just being like, okay, we're going to cover some more. Is that what you're?
So, because we keep pushing on the pay for testing, show me in the policy where it says it's not covered. And so they're like, okay, well, if you got it,
and then we won't pay for yours. It's such a cruel thing because it's one thing if they were finding if there was some like epidemic of fraudulent testing that was going on, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, all these companies are putting fake results. And I've yet to have one that was tested by two companies that didn't both come back with the same results.
I mean, I've seen it tested by the carrier where it didn't have as much, and then you send the carrier back out and watch them test and make sure they test in the right areas, and all of a sudden the stuff is there again. So
yes, I have, but the ones where, I mean, at least the ones that I was directly involved with, where they came out and tested after the homeowner had somebody test, they purposefully tested like the same areas. And I was there and asked them, hey, are you going to make sure to test the same areas? And they did. And they found the exact same results. And sometimes even more intense. I'm going to eat a little bit while we're talking. Sorry.
You should wait till you're done talking and then take the bite.
Uh-huh. I thought someone else would have something to say there. Sorry. Stay silent. That's on you. That's not on me. You just watch me eat for a while.
You didn't ask your question. You just stopped.
I didn't ask your question. You're right. I didn't set it up.
The question said, it's snack time.
This is food time. Thank you for joining me.
One of those days.
So
yeah, I don't get what they're doing exactly, but I am finding that, I don't know if I mentioned this in another office hours, but AIHA, that American Industrial Hygienists Association or something like that. I don't remember what it is. It's sorry.
About right. What about them?
Yeah. So they have one of the carriers and I believe it was farmers who said that, and this is a long time ago, and it's an adjuster who's not currently working. She said that, man, I can't get my, there we go. She said that the cleaning company, the remediation company they sent out, adhered to the AIHA technical guide for wildfire impact assessments in their remediation plan. Well, I bought the guide because tell me more. I want to know what this is. And it really doesn't have a lot to do with how to clean it, but it really, really addresses like testing. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm asking everybody, if I'm in their claim, if the insurance carrier or the adjuster has mentioned at all, like what protocol is driving their testing, because it's very clear. It says not just ash, soot, and char. It says VOCs, PAHs, furans, dioxin. It says all that stuff. And so for them to, if they're going to do some kind of, protocol, like what's driving what you're testing for? Like why are you testing for what you're testing? And I want to read somebody that's asked and they've foretold, because we've got guidance here in this book. Mm-hmm. So it's unnerving because they're only testing for lead and asbestos, as if those are the only two offenders. And when you look up online, they have remediation protocols for those things, but furans and dioxins,
they're not regulated. I mean, and especially all the things that are being talked about most right now, which is arsenic, cyanide. These are not regulated substances for cleaning. We talked about this last week. And so it's not super helpful to lean on those things oftentimes and hope to get a really good result. I was just talking to a tugboat user, so you would know who it is if I had said their name, Rachel, but I won't. And they have farmers insurance, and they had positive. This is part of what I want to talk today about. Partially because I posted on LinkedIn yesterday, and for some reason it ended up being one that people got uppity about. And my whole post was about, I mean, I've written about this a dozen different times in different ways, which is that small and medium size losses are the ones where the biggest problems happen and get the least attention. Like this shouldn't be a controversial topic.
People got mad at that?
Yeah, people. Yeah, I mean, for one reason or another, they either get, just because they know that I'm a policyholder advocate, they'll just sometimes just ignore what I said and talk and bring up something else. One guy that makes me, it's part of the reason we're going to talk about third-party administrators and carrier vendors today. One guy runs one of those types of places, and he's convinced that my whole post is trying to recruit restoration companies to sign clients and help them and sign AOBs, and then we would get money out of it. I don't know. People are crazy. It's the internet. I shouldn't be on it. But my point is, it made me think through the challenge of working with carrier vendors, which are a necessity and is not always bad. And there are plenty of good ones, but how we at Tugboat, and public adjusters get to see this too, but I think we get a really unique view at Tugboat of what happens when these incentives are a little too intertwined and issues come up. So on this farmer's claim, it is a wildfire claim with it's all fire debris damage. There's no direct fire damage at this property, but there's a lot of fire debris. So their house was about a quarter mile from the fire, but a quarter mile in all directions. So it was like literally it in the whole shape around their house. And so, and their windows, one window in their home happened to be open. And so their home was just full of debris, and it tested really high for lead. And so the homeowner was telling me about how when he was talking with the vendor, an abatement company, the vendor had told him, you know what, because the homeowner was worried, he has kids. He's like, I don't want to risk having all this lead in here. Can we say that all my our soft goods are total lost and the kids' toys are total lost and the mattresses? And the vendor was like, who's a very well-known abatement vendor. I'm not going to say the names of vendors on this one, but a very well-known abatement vendor was like, yes, like I totally get it. We will push for those things, like for all soft goods to be replaced. Sure enough, a week later, the carrier was like, we're not replacing your soft goods. Like they need to, all this stuff can be cleaned of the lead. And so then the vendor was like, look, we just have to like try to clean it a few times and then tell them it wasn't able to be cleaned. And then I'm like, and I'm just seeing as he's telling me through this, I'm like, what? Like seeing all the pieces that are at play here. One, the vendor's going to make all the money on the claim, right? Because they're going to try to
drain the coverage to go pay the vendor to try and clean it.
They're going to drain the coverage. The vendor's going to try to clean it, which we know plenty of times. I'm not throwing every vendor under the bus. They don't even try to. Like we have seen this so many times. They don't even try to. They just say they did, get paid for trying to clean it.
We don't even have that. We just seen it. We know vendors personally that wink, wink, do the thing. You know?
Yeah.
So.
So all that to say, like these are all well-known things. And so I feel like horrible listening to this guy have to talk through because his home is going to stay contaminated with lead. The vendor is in there working right now and just moving all the soft goods around from room to room. As this abatement vendor cleans each area, they're moving the soft goods back into those areas because the carrier hasn't even approved cleaning yet. And the carrier is trying to get them moved back in at the end of this year, at the end of this month, not the end of this year. So all of this to say, like this is a house that's thoroughly contaminated with lead. We've been in houses like this with if you left a window open or one was open when this fire came through and you were that close and it was that windy. It's so hard to conceptualize how bad this was. There were like 70-mile-an-hour winds blowing all this debris around, fire in all directions.
Scenario type of situation. Like this is like all the evidence we could possibly have to show that there's a problem and nothing being done about it.
And anyways, and this person was a tugboat user and now they were asking me about a public adjuster and if that was needed because they're just exhausted. They're like, we really love all the support we've gotten from Tugboat. We think that we've been able to advocate for ourselves so much better, but it just hasn't gotten us there yet. And I'm so tired and I don't want to have to do this anymore. And they're still playing the same game. So I don't need to talk about where that claim is going and what they'll do next. But all that to say, that is a vendor for the insurance company who is stuck in the incentives of I get my work from this insurance company. They were referred by the carrier. You guys all know who I'm talking about just because they're the big abatement vendor out here. So they get so much work from them that when a dispute comes up, and a very reasonable dispute on the side of the policyholder in this instance, my house is full of lead. My neighbors are all saying like soft goods should not try to be cleaned. My kids' stuff should not try to be cleaned. It does not make any sense. And if the adjuster, like he did in this instance, says, "No, we're not going to pay for replacing those things," the vendor doesn't get to play hardball with the adjuster, doesn't get to put their license on the line and be like, look, I am not going to go in there and try and clean these kids' clothes. Not going to do it. Right. I'm not going to say that they should get post-testing. So what was some of the advice I was talking with them through and saying like what a public adjuster might do for them is hold the vendor's feet to the fire and just be like, look, you're going to say that you can clean all these things. We're going to get these items that tested positive before, these clothing, these soft goods, we're going to get them tested again after you've done your cleaning. And you're going to have to put your name on the fact that you cleaned this place and said it was clear. And if it comes back negative, I'm going to post it publicly, not just send it to the insurance company.
Yeah.
And then see. And I was like, it's ridiculous that you would ever have to go that far in an insurance claim. and be like, look, I'm going to make your dirty laundry public if you don't just do the right thing here. Not like,
And it seems to be actually one of the directions that this industry is going, is that the fight is going to be taken to LinkedIn and all the public places, because that just seems to be the direction that everyone is at last resort. Just tell them you're going to post it on Facebook.
yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Which is so funny. There have been people that have, because I know PA firms, Allied Public Adjusters has done a great job of making some content that's really specific about specific claims. And I know it's been effective for them. And so other people that have seen that have asked us about making content that is more pointed about a specific claim to try to get coverage. And I'm not fully against it, right? But it's like, I just like crossing the threshold that is necessary to get coverage on a claim is like something I haven't intellectually been able to jump over yet. Like, it should never take me having to do this publicly to air out a specific claim on LinkedIn for you to be reasonable about it. There has to be another way. Right? I'd rather have the client sue you than us have to go through this public song and dance.
Yeah, because I mean, to lay it out for everyone that is watching, the situation goes: the vendor will come and say that it needs to be cleaned. The vendor has a relationship with the carrier. The carrier says no, it doesn't need to be cleaned, and then they put it back on the vendor, and the vendor's like, oh yeah, it doesn't need to be cleaned, and so then the carrier will go back. Behind the scenes, what's happening is the vendor is saying, like, the carrier is telling the vendor, you want more claims, you want more jobs, then you got to play our rules. And so the vendor will come back and officially say that they can clean the stuff. And then the carrier will go back and say, well, the vendor, the expert said that it doesn't need to be cleaned.
And so, I'll take it a step further. The hard part this puts somebody in for contents. So Chris, the full context for what you're saying here too is the adjuster can now tell the insured, look, the vendor says all this can be cleaned. He's saying he can clean it for $15,000, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll give you $15,000 right now, and you can get your stuff cleaned, or you can just keep $15,000. Or I can have the vendor try to clean it and just pay them directly. And you have to like kind of hope that they will stay on your side and report back to the carrier that stuff couldn't be cleaned, that couldn't be cleaned, right? But then they're putting their own name on the line. It's like, it comes back to the incentives. A vendor that says we clean contents of smoke damage is not going to be quick to say, hey, we couldn't clean your contents of smoke damage back to the insurance company. They're just not oftentimes. So all that to say, they force insureds into this tough position where you have to choose, well, should I take like $10,000, $15,000 now or risk hopefully getting more later if you don't clean my stuff well? Because like they don't commit to like, oh, we'll for sure pay for it if they can't clean it. There's like, okay, we'll reassess later if they try to clean it and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. What counts as it doesn't work? Does it have to smell still? What, like, and they get it back and it smells like the lavender detergent that you washed it in? Like, what does it have to be stained? Are we going to test all of my t-shirts for lead? Like none of those conversations will be had. So it forces people into an untenable position where they have to make a choice between a little bit of money now or hopefully getting what they're owed, which is all of their things replaced. This is another quick side note on the kids things. I felt so bad for some people with kids items that are in dispute, that are in a long claim. Daniel,
the kids aren't going to be.
They grow out of it. They're not interested in it anymore.
That happened with the one you and I are working on in Woodland Hills. That's what's the point? What's the point?
Yeah,
they're going to be grown out of it in the 2 years when I pull them out of storage.
Exactly, and that one was really well known, right? Because the house burned, so everything was going to be in storage. They could like try to clean it and bring it back, but it's like, no, I'm not gonna try and replace my kids' stacking blocks, and I don't think you should try to clean them. Or I'm not going to keep them rather. So anyways,
it's clothes, especially
clothes is the big one, right? They just grow out of them. So anyways, yeah, I think we can still spend some more time right now talking through, but the unique position that insureds are put in when it comes to vendors. Stephen Badger has been pushing really hard for a while now on LinkedIn that carriers should implement managed repair programs as much as possible. He thinks it's the solution for dispute resolution, that all the incentives align. He imagines that there could be no bad incentives in store for people, so why not just do it? And he points out it's like this is the way that the industry is going, and we've seen with the wildfires and other claims as well that it is the way the industry is going. Right? Carriers that were smart, they got in bed with a testing company that was willing to sign their name on some ridiculous testing results, or not results, but more recommendations.
Yeah, recommendations.
Yeah, and then restoration companies that were willing to work on using their protocols and agreed to those protocols. So I don't know, Rachel, do you have anything to add there from the tugboat perspective on how are you supporting people through trying to figure out how do I deal with this vendor that says my stuff can be cleaned, or that says that I don't need to paint my walls after heavy smoke damage? Like, what's your process for when the carrier's just being like, nope, we have a vendor that says it's good?
It really just depends on what it is. I typically tell people, like, you have to decide what you're comfortable with, and then we can fight from there. Mm-hmm. And it varies from person to person, what they're comfortable with. We've got different people that have different sensitivities. We've got people with they have cancer, they have small children, they've got, these people all share a home together, and so they share the couch, they share the rugs, they share all these things, and so it really does vary from one household to the next, like what they're actually okay with keeping. And what I typically try to give them is a letter that says, well, how are you going to prove it's restored to pre-loss condition? Just because it looks like it doesn't mean that it is, because you've been telling me all these months that there is no damage. So, and now that we've decided there is damage, how are we supposed to know? Basically get them to, agree to post cleaning testing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we are, but we're still not past some of these, them agreeing to pay for the pre remediation testing.
Yeah.
But that's typically what I tell people to do. Like, you've got to decide for yourself, like what is acceptable to you, based on the recommendations, based on public knowledge that's out there and available, and your hygienist recommendations. You've got to decide, and then we just keep fighting from there.
I think that one of the things I've learned from these fires, being so close to it, having so many people use tugboat with it, and I've seen some of it before, and definitely saw it on the carrier side, because you get specific guidelines for a storm. Like, Chris, the first storm we ever did in Houston, there were guidelines for how to adjust that storm.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the guidelines for what we're doing with painting, with patching for this storm. Like, as if this storm had magic damage that required specific types of repairs. But I am learning on the policyholder side how different it is to advocate for a claim where you're one of tens of thousands of claims, because the carriers are so obviously concerned about setting precedent that they just don't want to say yes to things, right? We don't want to say yes to testing unless we can find a loophole to say. It's like they need a loophole to say yes to everything, so that they can, on the next claim, deny paying for it again, and not have someone be like, oh, well, you're State Farm, you paid for my neighbors to do this, right? And they can be like, no, it's a different instance, like whatever. They had this type of scenario, you have a different one, that's why we paid for it there. And every claim is adjusted based on the individual facts. Yeah. So all that to say, it seems like almost every battle, or everything is a battle, because even things that it's usually so easy to get a carrier to agree to, they just don't want to agree to things. Like, they don't want to agree to anything without it being a battle, because they don't want to set a precedent. Danielle, has it been the same on the public adjusting side for the claims that you're running? Are you finding that small fights are not small anymore?
It's kind of been all over the map, like I've actually been able to get some adjusters to agree to replace all soft goods, all kids items, things like that. But it's been very few, the testing I submitted for additional testing to be done. They tested for lead and asbestos on this particular home. I submitted for additional testing for cyanide, chloride, anion, lithium, like all these other, things that weren't tested. And I actually got a response today denying it, saying that they're not going to agree to test for anything else. And they provided an email from their CIH telling us why it doesn't need to be done, basically.
What was his reasoning? I'm curious.
Ooh.
I can send it to you. It's kind of long, but basically, like, some of the stuff he's like, oh, well, this could come from vehicle exhaust. Like, we don't know where, if it tested positive in the home, we don't really know where it came from. Like, if it came from the wildfire or if it was already there.
It doesn't matter.
It's reasonable that it was there because of the fire.
It doesn't matter. Do they have any other? Can they prove that it is not from the wildfire? That's all that they have to.
Right.
What it would have to be. Can you prove?
Yeah, and like they brought up tobacco smoke and like other,
Even Badger would say otherwise, Chris. I just found an old screenshot of his I made so I could post about it someday, and I never did. And I think it's good for people to understand this. I'm going to find it right now and read it.
And I'll email this letter to you guys so you guys can just read it when you have a chance, because it's pretty interesting that, they even, and the CIH, like the email from him, whoever it is, it doesn't even have like a name or a contact. Like, I don't even know who this person is.
It's just
you know
a
what
person.
I mean? Yeah.
Wow, it came without a person's name attached to it. Wow. CIH is certified industrial hygienist.
Yeah. So there's a quote from Chip Merlin. This is just a comment on an old post. Brings us back to the fundamental question: who had the burden in the claims process to establish the covered claim? Of course, it's the insureds. My client's obligation, his client is the carrier, is to conduct a reasonable investigation. If the insured never makes any mention of, and the insurer never identifies the contents or lost rent damage, then I would put that squarely on the insured and not the insurance company. This all has to do with some new regulations going through, I think in Florida, maybe Texas.
I mean, that's still a completely different situation. That's saying that you didn't point out the damages. We're pointing it out.
Yeah, but you're pointing it out. It's it's his position that it's your job to prove that things are damaged.
Read that. I mean, if you read that,
he's not saying it maybe as explicitly here, but I've heard him talk about it several different times. Like, it's your job. The onus on you is to, and maybe he wouldn't take it all the way this far. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But his point here, this was a crazy one. And what was hilarious about it is it exposed a giant misunderstanding across claims, because there were independent adjusters, staff adjusters chiming in and being like, of course it's our job to do this. And other ones like, it's not. And the job that they're talking about is in this state, wherever it was, there was new case law that required the proof of loss to include all coverages and everything that would be claimed in them. And if you didn't do that within the first, it was like 45 days, that you could no longer claim it. So if you didn't claim the contents in your proof of loss in the first 45 days, the carrier could just deny it because you brought it up too late. Essentially,
a certain state that is doing this.
It was a case law within, I can't remember. I think it was either Florida or Texas.
I think it was Texas. I think I remember reading this too.
Because Chip was the one that posted about it, and it was just crazy. And Steven's essentially saying like, yeah, of course, someone has to present their own claim to us. We don't have to find coverage for it when we go in there. And a lot of adjusters, staff adjusters, IAs were like, that is my job to go in there and find coverage. And other ones were like, of course it's not my job. My job isn't to find coverage. It's to stare at damaged paint. I don't know what they think their job is.
I mean, specifically, at least in California's licensing, like in California code, it is the adjuster's job to find coverage, like specifically to.
Yeah, Cody's talked about that before, I think.
Yeah.
But all that to say, my comment back, I remember was something, I think he ignored it, but to the extent of you, like that argument justifies a public adjuster or tugboat more than anything else, or that position they just took. If now I can go tell every Florida homeowner, hey, if you don't get everything perfect in the first 45 days, you don't get to claim it later. You're going to want an expert to put together your claim.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it was just crazy that anybody
It's insane that you can't supplement. That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like, if you say, even with the water damage claim, right, you provide an estimate or claim the drywall, but then once you open up that drywall, you realize that the framing or whatever is, you know what I mean? And so you just can't, even for like unknown or unseen damages, you still can't go for it later
I don't know
on.
I don't know if it went as far as unnknown and unseen.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it only related to things like that could have been known at the beginning and weren't yet claimed. Because it had to do with a case where claim was made like years down the road for I can't remember, loss of rents or something like that, like very far after the fact. And so the court was taking this hard stance of like, you can't do that. And in doing so, setting a horrible precedent for future claims. What time are we on here? 3:30. Look at that. Plenty of time. Danielle, you were talking about that it's kind of all over the map. Some things are getting approved. Some things are not. Generally, do you feel like the claims that you're working on are moving forward? Are like there common themes of where things are stuck? Right now we're 7 months past the fire. Are people's homes cleaned? I know you're not doing you're doing some smoke damage and some total losses. Like, are buildings being rebuilt yet or anything like that? So like kind of what's the stage that people are at?
With the total loss ones, some of them just finally got, debris removal completed. So I do have, I believe, 2 that are in like the permit stage where they're, waiting on permitting to get started on things. So I think those are, it's crazy, but those seem to be going a little easier and faster than the smoke damage claims. Mm-hmm. No, I don't have one client that has started cleaning yet as far as their structure or personal property. Right. And it's because some insurance companies are literally waiting for the insured to provide an estimate for like contents cleaning. And they'll just, if they're putting it on the insured, I'm like, well, then they have to continue to extend the ALE, so they've been, and this particular client, she's like, I don't want to move back home right away. So they can we could take our sweet time, I don't care. But nobody, actually, I take that back. I have one client that has started cleaning and started work. And that's particularly because she's over it. She just wants to go back home.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of back and forth right now. Some adjusters are flat out just ignoring us altogether. Mm-hmm. So we're filing, on a couple of those, we're getting supervisors involved. We're filing complaints. We'll see how that goes. But really, it's like, and claims are being reassigned still, so I have probably within this last week, I've gotten at least 3 claims reassigned to new adjusters.
Jeez.
And I'm just like, okay, so it's kind of, like I said, it's all over the map.
It makes me want to bring it back even to the issue of third parties and vendors working on claims and kind of what I posted about, and that the smaller claims generally have the biggest problems. I think the smoke claims have exposed that the most. One, there's a lot of things going on with them, but they're smaller, right? They're the ones with the biggest problems, right? The biggest challenges to get things approved. The most subject. One of the things I wrote in a post I did was that smaller claims are the most subject to carriers' estimating guidelines, mm-hmm. right? There are not a ton of estimating guidelines that are going to affect your total loss claims, right? They're what they have to say about painting, like they will, right? In the grand scheme of it, you'll have to argue over the details on the line items. But a carrier's position on whether or not a wall should get painted after it gets HEPA-vac and wiped for a smoke damage, and like their estimating guidelines doesn't come into play with that. And so it is on these smoke claims where I think it's why it was on my mind so much as I wrote about it. It's like, this is where that's getting exposed the most and where people are super exhausted. I didn't realize that it was that so many people hadn't even been able to start cleaning. I guess explain to people, I think I know the answer, but why wouldn't someone just start cleaning, right? If they have some money or they have enough like to get a ServPro started with it, and why wouldn't they just get started?
Well, in my opinion, there's the amount that the insurance company is saying it's going to cost for like a ServPro or a Service Master, and I'm not saying they are all, you know, horrible, but obviously there are good ones. But then the actual cost of the proper cleaning that it's going to take. Do you know what I mean? And especially based on test results.
Yeah.
So I think it's the scope and the pricing is the difference where it makes the. I always tell my clients, I'm like, you don't want to, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can hire whoever you want. You can get started whenever you want. But in my recommendation, I'm like, I wouldn't get started on cleaning until you know what you have to work with.
Exactly.
You know, if your estimate is 100,000 and they've paid you 40, why are you going to get started when you might end up coming out of pocket $60,000? You know what I mean? So let's try to come to a final settlement. And it might not be that full 100,000, but if we could get you 70 or 80, you know what I mean? Then it's more reasonable and you're not having to be so far off.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally an insurance company it's one of the things as an advocate will be pretty hard lined on sometimes. It's like, hey, we're not starting the work or telling the homeowner to until we have an agreed scope and something close to an agreed price. It's not worth them taking on the burden and the risk of just saying yes to things. And a lot of times an insurance company will want you to just get started, right? Because you kind of get dug in.
ALE.
What's that?
All for the sake of ALE. They want you to get started under the guise, at least, of ALE.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had another. This was just random. Danielle, you mentioned that you're just not getting responses. I can think of two that I'm personally helping on as a public adjuster. One, partial fire, mostly smoke damage in the Palisades. And one that's a water loss in like Camarillo. The water loss one in Camarillo, we sent in a dispute to an engineer's, like a dispute being like one question about an engineer's report, and it took them 5 weeks to respond. This is what was coming to my mind earlier, that it was another bit of proof that a third party that is loyal to an insurance company will do a lot to cover their asses and stay loyal to an insurance company. On that one, the amount of because our question essentially was like, hey, you didn't consider these things and therefore like there's a good chance you're wrong. And they wrote what was like a 3-page engineer report became a 10-page plus engineer's report. All
the CEO of the company write the report and stuff too. So it was like super official as it could be. Being like, we are on the career side.
And it was still BS for all the same reasons. But then we sent a follow-up question, and it's been 6 weeks since they haven't even responded to it. And like DOI complaints, all this different, like that's crazy. I should be calling.
And it took them 5 months to get that report anyway. The 3-page.
The first one, yeah, the 3-pager. That's crazy. So that is one that comes to mind. Another one is the smoke one in the Palisades I was talking about. The carrier. Let's give the full context here because I don't know if all of you know about this one. The carrier, it's a townhouse, and the carrier wrote they wrote a $60,000 decontamination estimate to do abatement cleaning inside of the house. Probably not as much money as it should be, but it's an undisputed amount, right? They wrote that, and then the adjuster said, hey, but this house would cost $1.2 million to rebuild according to our square footage price. And there's a co-insurance clause on the policy. So, and they're only insured, I think she was only insured for a few $100,000. And she's only insured for this much. So we're applying this massive co-insurance penalty to it. It was like an 80% co-insurance penalty to it.
I remember you talking about that one.
Have I told you about this, Chris or Rachel?
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
yeah,
Rachel, if I haven't told you about it, I'm curious. Why would that be ridiculous to do in this situation? Can you think?
Remember what type of property it is.
Yeah,
well, because she's probably studs out. So
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And usually she's only paint in and they have the CCNR. So for full context, everyone, you are obligated to be insured for the full value of your property. If you have a co-insurance clause, you can actually get in trouble for not being insured to the full value of your property. It can, you can get issues within, when you get paid, they can diminish the payment essentially. So on this claim, this is a townhouse. If you have a condo, you'll be familiar, and you own that condo, you'll be familiar with something called the CCNRs, Codes, Covenants, and Restrictions, right?
Yeah.
That document outlines what it is exactly you own as a condo or townhouse owner. Do you own the drywall? Do you own the flooring? Do you own the cabinets? Do you just own the betterments, things that you install? And so this one, like many, said that she owned the paint in. So anything, the drywall, the plumbing, and insulation, anything inside the wall is owned by the HOA, essentially. And anything paint and in, she owns. So all she has to be insured for is the paint in. So you don't have to be insured for rebuilding the house. You have to be insured for putting new finishes in it, essentially, which she was. So all this to say, the carrier writes an estimate for 60-something thousand, promptly decreases that payment by 80% and sends like a $20,000 payment, whatever it is, whatever the math checks out there to be. And we immediately are like, hey, I think this is a mistake. You applied co-insurance when you shouldn't, right? Like it just, here's the reason why. And they were like, the adjuster was, who's a third-party administrator. It's an IA firm. And who the manager also works for the IA firm, isn't a staff manager, was like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk to my manager about this. And we're like, why would you have to talk to your manager about this? This was a mistake. You shouldn't have applied a co-insurance penalty. Like, don't admit to them that you made a mistake. Just fix it. Like,
yeah,
just fix it. No, I have to go to the manager. Go to the manager of the third-party administrator, the IA firm. He's like, oh, I see. Yeah, we'll have to see about this. Like, not an easy, like, oh yeah, this is obvious. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to talk to the carrier about this and see what their opinion is. We're like, what are you talking about?
They use the CCNRs all day long to get out of paying, but it's
all types of stuff.
CCNRs are not in their favor. They just do
all the time. And so it was just this absurd. I'm like, wait, why is anybody talking to anybody? This is a mistake. We learned about co-insurance in our licensing courses. Like, we can do this. We can figure this out. And I was telling Aaron, my Tugboat co-founder, I said, I sent my first scathing email in a long time. I don't send scathing emails very much anymore. I'm much more like Chris Voss. I'll ask you a few questions. But I was so frustrated on this one because I'm working on it with another public adjuster at Waypoint. He had sent like 20 emails to this about this over the last 3.5 months on this one issue. And made like half a dozen phone calls. I had called twice and it just nothing happening. Right. And this is like an obvious, shouldn't be an issue, but somehow is still an issue. It's eating up her. Well, she only had a really minimal amount of ALE. So she's having to pay out of pocket already for additional living expenses. So it's extending the time that she's out of her house. She can't get things decontaminated. But yeah, that is a 3.5 month. Let's try and get sorted the most basic issue.
Somebody got an attaboy because someone saw when that happened, like, dude, we just got an 80% decrease. Everyone's giving high fives. Nobody wants to take responsibility for taking the attaboy back.
Well, probably nobody wants to admit a mistake. And finding like someone that was underinsured and applying co-insurance. And again, I don't think most IA firms aren't explicitly being like, we want low estimates. But if I was to go back to a manager for sure and said, hey, I think this person's underinsured, like co-insurance might apply, that looks really good to an IA firm, to the carrier, right? Like, oh my gosh, you applied this somewhat lesser known piece of the policy. Good catch. Exactly. That's what it would be. It would be an attaboy. Like, hey, this is a good catch. Co-insurance applying, decreasing the payment by this much. Yeah. So yeah, nobody wants to admit that that this was a giant stupid mistake.
I'm gonna just think about that in the context of everything we have been talking about and the articles that have come out about carriers purposely underinsuring homes. And then so carriers purposely underinsure the home, then penalize the people for having underinsurance. That's, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's pretty wild out there. It's not getting any easier. That's for sure. We'll end it a little bit early. Is there anything else you guys want to go over though before then?
I mean, I did want to throw out a little bit because there's a lot of storms happening right now already in the country. There's not a lot of press on it, really. Not surprising in my universe, but surprising that there's not a lot of press on like once in a 1,000-year floods happening probably once every couple of days for the past 2 weeks. We have New York, New Mexico, New Jersey, Texas, all this happening. And we haven't seen the results of what that's going to look like on the industry yet. But I would expect that this season coming up is going to be a season of really challenging claims because they're about to be paying out a lot of money or being a lot of dispute. And then on top of that, a lot of the people in those situations, if anyone is watching this and knows anybody that is in those situations, what they're going to be dealing with a lot is flood insurance versus typical home insurance. And there's going to be a battle of the insurance carriers trying to claim that that's not covered because it's a flood, and how do you dispute that? And just I want to give like a little tip of, if it's from the ground up, it's a flood. If it's from the roof down, then it can be considered part of any other part of the storm or that happened. So there's not a lot to be said about that right now because we haven't been taking in a lot of claims. We haven't heard about the landscape of what's going on, but I would assume that we're going to be hearing a lot of that. A lot of people getting denied claims because flood is not covered. And what does that mean? And we'll probably talk about that more in the coming weeks.
For sure. Yeah, let's earmark to maybe next week spend some time talking about hurricane preparedness because we're in hurricane season now.
There's already a hurricane brewing off of Florida. There's a tropical storm brewing off of Florida. So it's the first one already.
So yeah, we're in hurricane season now, obviously in flood season, a lot of things going on. Want to make sure that we are addressing all the relevant topics for those people as well. So appreciate you bringing that up, and we can dive into some of that next week. I don't have any notes prepared there.
I'll be ready to share all of my tips.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's part of my deal. Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate you all. We'll end it 10 minutes early today. But if you joined us, thanks for coming to Tugboat's office hours. And we didn't get any questions today. I didn't have the chat open the whole time.
I got VCRG saying
Chris
that I'm the best PA.
I saw that with 6 fire emojis.
And then 1, 2, 5 salutes.
5 salutes, yeah. So anyways, appreciate you all. This is officially the start of the sign-off music. We should really get theme music going for Tugboat.
We should get viewers, I think.
We have 5 going on right now.
I think that's me. Because I'm like I'm on all the different
parts. On all of them. No, it says 3 on Facebook, and then there's a few on Instagram. Yeah. But I appreciate you all. We'll talk to you guys next week.
All right.
Yeah, bye.